The next topic, as we switch some members of the panel, is something that personally saddens me every time I talk about it, which is the loss of liberty in the United States of America at the hands of the government. This is not something some terrorists did to us. This is not something that some foreign power has thrust upon us. Rather, this is something that we have elected our own representatives to do. Things like the Patriot Act, things like the Real ID Act, things which absolutely cut holes in the Constitution. As a child, I never imagined that my elected representatives would do, but they have. On this topic, Jake Hornberger stays with us. Stacy Litz joins us. She's the vice president of the Student Liberty Front. There's that word again. Representative Rohrer stays with us, and Aaron Moyer stays with us as well. When we were colonists and the king and the parliament wanted money from us, one of the insidious ways in which they did it was to enact the Stamp Act. And the Stamp Act required that every piece of paper in your possession, a book, a deed, a mortgage, even a poster you were going to nail with a tree, have the king's stamp on it. You think it was crazy going to a post office? You had to go to a foreign post office here in Pennsylvania to buy the king's image. Question: how did the king and the parliament know if every piece of paper in your possession had the king's image on it? Answer: the Writs of Assistance Act, a monstrosity enacted by the parliament that let British soldiers write their own search warrants. We fought a revolution, we wrote a constitution, we put in the Fourth Amendment, which says only judges can issue search warrants, and only on the basis of probable cause, evidence sworn to under oath, which demonstrates more likely than not that there is evidence of a crime in the thing the government wants to seize. Did you ever think, Jake Hornberger, that we would see a day where a popularly elected Congress would enact a monstrosity like the Patriot Act, which would allow federal agents, our employees, to write their own search warrants?
Well, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, you're talking about the national security letters in the Patriot Act.
Well, that's another thing. They always give them these nice-sounding phrases. Instead of calling them self-written search warrants, they call them national security letters. I guess they read George Orwell.
Of course, and it should have been called the Treason Act instead of the Patriot Act. But the point is that the framers of the Constitution understood that the greatest threat to our freedom lay not with some foreigner. It lay with the United States government. It is Congress that is named specifically in the First Amendment as the potential threat to freedom of speech and freedom of religion. So it doesn't surprise me that Congress attracts people like that. We have to just, as the citizens, constrain that power and make sure they don't get out of their bounds.
Stacey, if the Constitution guarantees freedom of speech, if the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, are you worried when Congress enacts laws that do abridge freedom of speech? Because if you receive one of these self-written search warrants and you tell anyone, your spouse, your lawyer, a priest in confession, a judge in a public courtroom, that you received this, they can charge you with a felony of speech. Does that terrify you?
Yeah, it does, but I think that the government gets away with so much that it does because it puts fear in the people. People are scared that there's a terrorist behind every corner. Like, all this hype, all the media, that it makes people just give up their rights like this. They don't even give it a second thought.
Interesting you said people are scared. Fear is a weapon, Aaron, that the government uses when it wants to take away our freedom. Agreed? Yes. Is that one of the reasons that war is the health of the state? Because when people are afraid, they sort of go for that satanic bargain. Hey, give me your freedom and I'll keep you safe. Do people actually fall for that?
I think a lot of people do, actually. I think a lot of people believe that the government is a benevolent institution that's out, like we've always talked about, to protect our rights, and not a lot of people question that. But when things go through, like the Patriot Act and the national security letters, all these things, the Missouri Act that was looking out for Ron Paul supporters as terrorists, like there's all kinds of crazy things that are going on. People don't look at these, they don't question them, they just let them go through.
Representative Rohrer, we are in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It is older than the government of the United States of America. The reason we have a government of the United States of America is because the 13 colonies gave a little bit of their power to the central government. As Ronald Reagan reminded us in his first inaugural, the states created the federal government and not the other way around. What happens in Harrisburg when a bill comes from Washington, say, saying, thou shalt do this, thou shalt do that. And if you don't do it, we'll take money away from you. And if you do it, we'll pave some highways so you can give up a little of your state sovereignty. Does that offend you?
It offends me highly, and it's the reason why the states have become so weakened and dependent upon the federal government today. In these days of economic troubles that we're on, the reason the states are in such dire financial constraints is because the federal government has put upon them laws and regulations for which they had no authority to be involved, promised money, never delivered it, and the states are now subservient in many respects to the whims of the federal government.
I have always thought that this is a bribe. I mean, if I went to the legislature in Harrisburg and said, change the drinking age, change the maximum speed on your highways, and if you do, I'll pay some bills for you, I would expect to be in handcuffs and charged with bribery. But that is literally exactly what bureaucrats in the federal government do, and the states go for it because money is king.
The corruption in the system in Washington and the states are hooked entirely to the issuance of bribe money. And it's taxpayers' dollars that are used in every case for which there is no authority or authorization to do so, but it absolutely brings sovereign states to their knees if they fall for it.
Stacey, you walk out of this building and a police officer comes up to you and says, hey, lady, where are you going? Where are you coming from? And let me see your papers. Did you ever think that would happen in the United States of America?
No, I did not, but sadly it does happen, and it's absolutely ridiculous.
If the government requires that we all have some sort of standard form of identification, which not only has our fingerprints in it, but our medical and legal histories, which government agents called cops can swipe in their cars and find out everything they want about us just because we happen to be in their crosshairs, is that the America that you thought you'd grow up in?
No, I never did.
Is there anything less American than the notion that we don't have breathing room, Representative Rohrer, that the government can stop us and ask us where we're going, what we're doing, and by the way, let me have that card. I want to see if you're supposed to be out tonight or whether or not you have the flu?
That is the complete opposite of what freedom I understand and liberty that I understand to be a part of what we are in America. That, unfortunately, is the direction that we're going, whether you touch on Real ID or the Pass ID Act that's being talked about. It's not just a card, understand. It's the use of facial recognition technology, which they have everybody in this room. They've got your picture, and with a camera around in the building, they can track you where you go right now. Did you know that? That's what it's all about. That is not America as I want it to be.
Did the people who thought that they voted, the young people who thought when they were voting for Senator Obama to become president, did they expect that this stuff would continue in his administration? Or Aaron, did they think, Aaron from the front, did they think it would stop? By the way, you know why he's wearing a red shirt? There's a baseball game going on in New York tonight. Did they think it would stop, or are they shocked that it's continued?
It's both. I'm firmly convinced that everyone in my school that voted for Barack Obama thought he did stand for change. He would get rid of the Patriot Act. He would stop all these taxes. He would stop the wars. He would stop searching you. He would do all these things. And none of it's happened. And then I think there's kind of a backlash now that students are angry about this. They're very frustrated that Barack Obama has fulfilled none of his promises.
Jake Hornberger, I have suggested that in this country we don't have a two-party system. We have a one-party system called the big government party. There's a Republican branch which assaults our civil liberties and loves war, and there's a Democratic branch which assaults our commercial liberties and loves taxes. But everybody in this big party likes to control other people. Question: was that ever contemplated by the people who, in this city, a few blocks from where we are now, wrote the Constitution of the United States of America and promised the Bill of Rights?
Absolutely not. I mean, these were people that established a country in which they believed that government was going to be limited and where freedom and free markets were going to flourish. Never could they have dreamed that we've now got one big government party. And with the exception of Ron Paul, they're pretty much all alike. They all favor bigger government, either foreign policy or domestic policy. That's, of course, what the libertarian policy is all about.